Before we get started, I just want to acknowledge all the hard work that's been put in by a lot of people. Obviously, the coaches and the personnel department, but a lot goes into this, and so many departments, from the trainers to Bert and his group, to the equipment guys, to the security people, lots of people, and I just want to say thank you to those guys. They really work hard and have done a great job for us. A lot goes into this. I don't really, it has not much since we last talked in Orlando a month ago. It's changed. Still feel good about this draft, and I'm excited about the opportunities at pick number 20, and we'll see where it goes. Coach.
I second the opening statement that Omar provided. Man, I'm just appreciative of the work that the scouts and the personnel department does for us over the course of a 12-month calendar. We as coaches kind of get on a moving train after the season ends in an effort to be a component of the evaluation process. There's been great fluidity in our process. Omar and myself have had an opportunity to spend a great deal of time together over the last several months, absorbing a lot of information that's going to be useful to us as we make decisions. And I'm also excited about our draft because of just the quality work that we've been able to get done in free agency. It's two means by which we develop our football team for 2024 that goes with existing talent. It's free agency and the draft, and we've been very active in free agency, and that makes you really comfortable as we lean in on draft weekend, so that we've addressed a lot of needs and you don't feel overly thirsty in any particular area. And I just think that that's a good feel as you go into the weekend.
Or since the owners meeting, is anything in terms of certain positions or anything change when you're looking at the draft, whether the strengths or the strengths still the strengths?
Yeah, I'd say the strengths are still the strengths. Obviously, we've done a lot of work in the last month, and guys are moving up and down, and you feel good about certain guys, is not as good about other players. But overall, it's pretty close.
What do you find out at top 30 visits that you can't find out at the combine or pro days, and how important are those visits in your pre-draft process?
Extremely important. The more access you can get to know these players, and some players you might have medical issues or other questions, and to have the opportunity to bring them in and sit down with the coaches and understand how they would fit for us, and how we would fit for them if we do business with them. But it's extremely important.
Mike, those top 30 visits, can they seal the deal on a certain guy, or is it more supplemental just for what you already know?
In some instances it's significant, in some instances it's a box check. We got several ways to gain exposure to players during this process. Those that participate in the Senior Bowl, we get an opportunity to interview those guys down there. Obviously, we get combine opportunities. Omar and myself, we travel to a lot of pro days, and so the 30 visits is another means of gathering pertinent information. Sometimes the guy's a non-combine invite, and we want medical information, for example. Sometimes a guy wasn't a Senior Bowl participant, and we didn't interview him at the combine. We also have local visits that are non-counters. I just think largely for us, it's about exposing ourselves to as many of these guys as we can, and the 30 visit is just a means of catching something if some of the other opportunities have not provided that.
One position where you don't seem to have a long-term starter is center. With the evaluations you've done with the top 30 visits, bringing those guys in, has your thoughts changed or evolved on that position going into the draft?
Certainly it's an important position, and I've mentioned this before, but we have guys on the roster that have flexibility, so we have options there. But there's some good players at the position, and we'll see where it shakes out.
Like building off of that. Going off the center position, what are kind of some of the strengths of this class of centers in the draft this year?
Of the centers?
Yeah.
There's a handful of centers that are a number of players that are at the position that are going to be starters in the NFL this year, in years to come. But it's no different than the other positions. I mean, there's good players at all these positions this year.
Building off of that a little bit, when it comes to a potential starting offensive lineman in your defense and edge, a quarterback, when you've got the first round pick
how do you weigh that, say, against, like in your guys' case, where you might have had some attrition at defensive back or wide receiver, where you play multiple people at multiple times? How do you weigh that importance?
You do. I don't know that there's a cookie cutter formula if that's what you're asking. It's about the players. It's about their floor. It's about their ceiling. It's about their readiness. And so there's a lot of variables in the equation. And so what it requires is a lot of discussion. And that's what's been ongoing for us.
Like every year, it seems there's so many wide receivers that the class is so deep of every draft. Why is that, first of all? Is that just something that's just going to happen? I don't know forever.
I think it's the nature and the development of the game. I think everybody plays with 3 receivers and 5 defensive backs at this stage of the game now. I also think it's, development of 7-on-7 football at the lower levels in high school, where it's becoming more of a year-round endeavor. And so the people that are involved in 7-on-7 have an opportunity to have a higher level of skill relative to their positions than people that don't. And I think it's played out not only in this draft, but those preceding this draft in recent years. You just really see the impact and the development of high school 7-on-7 as it pertains to the development and readiness of the people that participate in it.
Omar, you added a couple of receivers in free agency. How much of a priority, what are you looking to add in that group from this draft?
Yeah, it's no different than any of the other positions. I've said this before. Really, the competition, it's important to us, and any chance there's an opportunity to upgrade a room, we're gonna look into it. And but it's a good receiver group, so we're optimistic about the opportunities.
Omar, is it an endurance process for you? Like a 72-hour window of Thursday morning till the end of Saturday. Do you guys sleep well? I mean, is there a day where it's exhausting? And could you just kind of take us through, like,
It's really 3 different processes. You got work you need to do the first day, and then you rally, and priorities change not only for us but for everyone on day 2 based on what happened day 1, and so it's a reset. And so I don't know that any of us look at it like a 72-hour process. I think it's Thursday, and then you regroup and assess not only what we've done but what others have done, and you get ready for the next day, and then you repeat the process. It's exciting, particularly when you're prepared.
Omar, Isaac Williams was very active for you guys this offseason, of course, coached the Senior Bowl. What kind of input was he able to give you guys on that position, and how valuable is that input in this process for you?
It's extremely valuable. I mean, we put him in those positions to gather information for a reason. We utilize it, and I think the Senior Bowl. He would tell you the same thing. The Senior Bowl was probably a great experience for him, but the knowledge he gets from getting to know those guys over a 7 or 8 day period, it's extremely important. We get great feedback from him, and I'm glad we did it.
Isaac planted you, didn't he? Isaac does a great job.
You talked about how you're looking to find Steelers. What is that process like? Is it something, do you found a Steeler on tape, or is that in the interview process? What are you kind of trying to find through that information gathering process?
Yeah, no, it's all encompassing. It's the tape, it's getting to know the person, it's doing the homework on them, talking to people that have been around them, and just the question before, having the opportunity like Isaac to get to know some of these guys. I mean, it's all encompassing, but it's a diligent process, and it's exciting to be a part of.
After the first draft class of yours pretty good. Do you put a lot of pressure on yourself to equal that?
I don't know if I put a lot of pressure on myself. I mean, I think we go into every one of these picks trying to get the best player possible for this organization that's going to help us win a championship. I mean, that's what we're trying to do.
You guys have traded.
You go through all the pro days, the process. What percentage would you say the evaluation focuses on your number 1 pick through the pro days, and what percentage would be after that?
I think, personally, when I'm at a pro day, I'm trying to get to know as many people as possible, and that's why we go to some of the pro days that we go to. We go to Georgia, we go to Bama, we go to Michigan kind of routinely, because you see a lot of prospects. Michigan had, I think, 18 combine invites, and so obviously all of those guys aren't first rounders. Man, I'm trying to gain information about any and all of those guys, but That's just the mindset. We step into town. You come in prepared enough on the front end, it allows you to cast a big net and get an exposure to everyone. And so the key for us, in an effort not to get hyper-focused on the high-level draft picks, as you mentioned, is to go in with a certain level of preparedness.
Mike, how much has Arthur Smith kind of hopped on a moving train in this pre-draft evaluation process, and how does kind of his evaluation factor into how you're grading guys?
He's been a big component of it, as all the coaches have. We respect opinions. We particularly, us meaning the Pittsburgh Steelers, man, we just think opinions are a major component in terms of us coming to Steeler decisions. And so it's perspective, it's people's opinions, and it's communications and evaluation meetings in an effort to find common ground. And he's been a big component of that and has done a nice job of really infusing himself into it immediately.
You mentioned the Michigan, I think, with so many guys in this draft for them and their head coach now in the NFL, was it tougher to get information on the Michigan guys this year, or?
I mean, it's always tough to get information,
Was Harbaugh holding himself back, or?
It's always difficult in some locations to get information. In some instances, it's easier. It's just part of the process for us.
You mentioned pro days. Now that you have Justin Fields in your fold here, can you take us back to what that pro day experience was like with him? Has that got a lot of attention at the time on video and everything?
You mean the Ohio State Pro Day back when, a few years back?
Sometimes at pro days, I'm looking at people that I'm not interested in because I know everyone's watching. And so that's, to be bluntly honest, there's not a lot of my peers that work on the pro day circuit the way that I work. And so I understand my movement, what I pay attention to, who I conversate with, all becomes media fodder. And so sometimes I have fun with you guys.
Has there been, over the years, any sort of fundamental view against trading down in the first round? And if so, what might it take for you guys to be tempted to do that this year?
Yeah, no fundamental. I mean, I would just say, you never trade away. In my opinion, you never trade away from a good player. But obviously, if there's ever a scenario that makes sense for both sides, and you have to look at it. But
Part of the reason I was asking is there already have been some GMs who have said, somewhere around 20. Like, that just seems to be a number that's thrown out there. Well, you guys are at 20, so is there any sort of reason why you think that might be a cut line where some people see that as a sweet spot?
I don't. You'd probably have to check with them, but we'll listen.
It's probably an historical sweet spot, to be quite honest with you. That's probably the area where people are having those discussions because they're good football teams that are usually picking playoff caliber football teams, and sometimes trading back provides value for those teams that don't have glaring needs. I think that's probably a spot that's kind of annual in terms of those discussions.
Was it hot when you guys had Kenny there at 20? It seems
it seems like it always is, to be quite honest with you, for the reasons that I outlined.
Omar, you were just
What can you
kind
do
of,
ahead of time on potential trades or where you think trades might be beneficial for you, and how much is a 3-minute scramble when somebody gets on the clock and the phone rings?
What was the first part of the conversation?
How much of a potential trade can you sit here today, this week, think this might be a place where we want to move up, that, this looks like a place in the draft we would like to be, and can you do work ahead of time, or is it all just sort of in the moment there?
We have plenty of strategy meetings. We've already started between now and Thursday about where the threshold would be or our comfort level is with certain guys, and there's a million hypotheticals you go through right now, and amongst the GMs, we all talk amongst each other, so we kind of have a feel of who wants to move up, move down, and you're kind of prepared. But to say it happens with 3 minutes left on the clock, probably not the case. I'd say we probably have a good idea before we're even on the clock.
How much groundwork did you have late last year to move up to get Broderick, or did a lot of that come together on Thursday?
That one came together on Thursday. I wouldn't say with 3 minutes left on the clock, but it was pretty close to us being on the clock.
Omar, you were kind of laughing when Mike's talking about how he operates at pro days. What is it like for you seeing the way that he goes about, showing interest in guys he's maybe not interested in, or some of just the way that he moves in those situations?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, sometimes I think he's trying to trick me too when he's maneuvering there too. But it's great. I have said this before. Like, I've never met anybody that's got a greater passion for this and this process than Mike Tomlin. It's awesome just seeing him work at the Senior Bowl, and I can tell you the information that he gets, just being around the players and getting to know those guys and other people that are there, other coaches, college coaches. It's pretty awesome.
Omar, you guys have remade your quarterback room on the fly. You don't have anybody locked up long term. How would you evaluate this class beyond it? I mean, there's a bunch of guys that are probably going to go early. Is that still a position of need just to get an arm in camp, and is the draft a way to do that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking me, or I think it's not realistic that we'll be taking a quarterback in round one. If that's what you're asking, no.
Why beyond that? I mean, what do you think of the guys beyond that?
Yeah, there's some good players there, and I wouldn't close the door on anything. If there's an opportunity to improve that room, obviously we'll look at it. But like you said, we have 3 guys that are in one-year deals, and we have to be open to it.
Mike, at the beginning, you mentioned going into the draft, you're not thirsty because of all the work done in free agency. How's kind of the team building process evolved? Because you guys have built through the draft for so long, but now coming into it with almost a head start from free agency.
I don't know that I've looked at it from an evolution perspective. We just do what it is we need to do to position ourselves to be in pursuit of the confetti game this year. And so we had some business that needed to get done. We were active in free agency accordingly. I don't know that I've evaluated in the ways that you've asked.
This year, how are you balancing best player available versus a positional need or want? I know everybody always says best player available, but is there some balance that has to be worked out there? Obviously, not quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same as it's always been. I mean, you take a best player at a need position. So.
Well, you were asked before about Arthur Smith. When you change the coordinator and you change the quarterback, how much do you also have to consider their strengths and weaknesses in roster construction and other players who might complement what they want to do?
Yeah, I think when you have a change, you always have to have the discussions. Some hard discussions have to happen, and we've had those.
Are you guys board done or close to being done? And I know you told me before that you guys don't do mock drafts anymore, but do you have an idea of what the teams ahead of you might take or might do?
Yeah, we've gone through a ton of hypotheticals. I'd say the board is, it's. We try not to overthink this too much, but I'd say that it's close to being where we feel comfortable. But we're going through a million scenarios right now. It's just part of the strategy process, and these next 2 days are going to feel like a year. But yeah, I'm ready to get there.
Omar, do you guys still do like top 20? Is that what you do?
What do you mean?
We mock it for us, if that's what you're asking. It's a waste of time to try to figure out how others might address their needs and things of that nature. We mock it for us.
So, Mike, I'm sorry. So when you do that, you look at you rank like this in this instance the 20 best players or the 20 players you think you might have a shot at?
Best.
Mike, how does this process and the relationships you're building with these guys now help, not just for this weekend, but down the line when you're considering free agents, trades, that type of thing?
I just think, as was mentioned, we build our team primarily through the draft. We supplement the free agency, and even when we're supplementing the free agency, oftentimes it goes back to, knowledge and relationships established in draft prep. And so, you could say that you could use that in terms of identifying some of the free agents that we were able to do business with in this cycle. Usually that interest was born in draft prep. And our knowledge of them, the base of our knowledge of them is based on interest that we had when they came out in the draft.
Mike or Omar, you guys have talked about the depth of receiver because of the way the college game has changed. Has that also led to more depth at corner because there's more people in that position?
No question. When I answered the receiver question, that's why I said those that participate in 7-on-7, because the same could be said for corner.
Mike, how do you a lot of turnover in the wide receiver room this offseason. How do you feel about that room as we sit now? And the second part of that, do you anticipate George taking a more of a leadership role this year because he's the vet?
Yeah. First part of that, I'm comfortable with the trajectory of that room. As we mentioned, the guys come in ready-made. There's a lot of talent available to us, and a lot of those guys will participate. If you look at the kid from the Rams, was really significant this year, and I think maybe it was a 5th-round pick. That's what's going on at that position. So it makes us all comfortable, not just us, but us as a collective, the National Football League. And certainly we're really comfortable with the trajectory of George Pickens in terms of what he's going to be able to provide us as a player, not only in terms of playmaking, but what his experience within the room and within this organization provides us.
Mike, do Trice and Rush have anything to do with how thirsty you are at cornerback? What's the expectation for those guys?
I'm sorry?
Corey Trice and Darius Rush. What's the expectation for them? Are they impacting at all?
You know, they're going into their 2nd year, and so obviously we expect guys in their 2nd year in the program, regardless of position, to make a significant step. I think that's a reasonable expectation, and so we're excited to see what they're able to provide.
Corey, healthy, okay?
Moving in the right direction, certainly.
When you look at a college guard or even a college tackle who might be able to play center in the NFL, what are the traits that you want to see in this process, and reasons why it might work out or why it might not?
Usually there's some intellect things in terms of front identification and so forth, communication-oriented things, and they have to show an aptitude for that. And preferably, they have something in their background, whether they were a backup guy that did it in practice, so you didn't see him do it in the game, or maybe a guy that maybe did it as a young guy and evolved to other positions as they've gotten older. Usually there's a history of some kind there and an aptitude there that allows you to make those assumptions.
Are there physical criteria too, whether it's certain size, length, movement abilities that you guys got to see?
Yeah, but those are just guidelines. There are exceptions to every rule. They're short tackles, they're tall centers. I think we're all pretty familiar with that discussion.
Those intellectual things, is that something you find out during these top 30 visits?
You find it out at any point in the process. I learn about their football intellect when I'm standing on the field watching practice in Mobile, when I interview guys in Indy. I think you guys are probably making a little bit more out of these 30 visits with the line of questions that we're getting. It's just another component of building a profile.
Like when you call a player that night and tell him he's a Pittsburgh Steeler, what's that emotion like for you? Just what do you appreciate about that exchange?
Obviously it's less emotional for me. More than anything, I'm just trying to get a sense of how they absorb the moment, because it's just a window into who they are, or what motivates them, or the spirit in which they're going to walk into that door for the first time. And so really for me, I'm just trying to assess their mindset as they receive the information.
We talk about the Senior Bowl, the Combine, the 30 visits, the high-end guys, the high-profile guys, but the 3rd day guys, the 6th, 7th round guys, your interaction, does that go to the depths of your status on the team, or is that more dependent on the scouts and what they put into kind of?
We try to touch everyone. Yeah. We do. There are not a lot of first rounders in Mobile, for example. We try to touch everyone.
Does the new kickoff rule, does that change what you're looking for at the bottom of the draft in terms of body type and things of that nature?
I think we're all speculating regarding what the impact of the new rule. We could give you an answer, but it's speculation. Obviously, we're making certain moves relative to that, its impact on the game. That's why we went out and signed Patterson immediately, for example. But I think we're all in the process of figuring out the impact of that play on the game and decision makings in terms of roster building and who gets a hat, late round selections, et cetera. I think we'll all have a better understanding of it 12 months from now.
Omar, the previous question about the cornerbacks. Are you approaching the draft as if some of those veteran cornerbacks that were on your team last year that are still available in free agency could come back, or are you assuming they're gone elsewhere?
They're not a part of the team right now. So until they're a part of the team, we have to look at every avenue to try to improve the position and add competition and address the needs.
Omar, what has Andy Weidel brought to this draft preparation now that you guys are going into number 2 together? If you have any specific anecdotes about Andy, feel free to share.
I have a lot of anecdotes about Andy. I'm not really going to share them. No, we go way back. But Andy's been great. I've said this before. I'm very fortunate to have a great staff around me. With Andy and Sheldon White and Mark Sadowski, Cole Marku, Dan Colbert, and the rest of the guys. And it's just been, they're great for me. But, you know, Andy leads this process, and he does an awesome job of it, and, you know, excited what Thursday's going to bring.
Ahead of the draft, have you guys made decisions on fifth-year options for Fields and/or Najee?
Yeah, we know we have till May. I've said this before. We've had till May 2nd to make that decision. So, you know, we're focused on the draft this week, and I'm sure we'll have some serious conversations about that next week.
Mike, what do you like better, the process, the hunt, or the pick kill?
I like the process. I'm a process guy. It's just good. It's good for the short term. It's good for the long term. You cannot be in this business without, you know, personnel being a hobby and knowledge about personnel, and that's what it's about for me. There's a pool of people coming into the National Football League, and it's our job to know them. Whether or not we get an opportunity to do business with them in the short term is irrelevant. They're guys that are coming into this business, and we gotta know what they're about. Those that we don't get an opportunity to do business with, we'll probably compete against, and so that's the mindset that I go into the process about, and that's why I'm a process guy. That's why my urgency is there.
Omar, obviously you guys added Patrick Queen in the middle. Is there any update on Holcomb? How do you feel about the depth of that position, and what do you think about it in the draft?
Yeah, I can tell you Cole's working extremely hard to get back. I don't really have much to add on the timeline. We've discussed it was a major injury, but he's working hard, and I'm optimistic about all the effort he's going to put into getting back on the field. In terms of the depth, you know, it's no different than the other ones. I hate to sound repetitive, but if there's an opportunity to add competition and improve a room, we're going to do it.
Good. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.